Good morning, and welcome to the 10 Point, your daily guided tour of the best reporting and analysis from the Wall Street Journal. I'm your host, and today is Sunday, August 16, 2026. We've got a packed edition today: 3 deep dive features, a slate of major headlines, market commentary, a critical look at the Colorado River crisis, the week ahead, a striking number on fund performance, and a delightful culinary adventure right here in New York City. Let's dive in. We open today with 3 tales of the unexpected, as editor-in-chief Emma Tucker frames it from her desk. First, we travel to Maysville, Kentucky, where 2 self-described country hicks turned down a life-changing $26 million offer from a company that wants to build an AI data center on their farmland. The ensuing drama has left the town divided. Then, college dropouts who go on to found or lead big companies remain rare. We asked 4 successful entrepreneurs who bypassed a degree how they built their businesses. And lastly, a growing crowd of car enthusiasts is collecting vehicles that are remarkably normal. Think Ford Tauruses, Honda Civics, and Buick station wagons. That's the roadmap. Let's start in Kentucky. Just over 1 year ago, an unknown company started scooping up Kentucky farmland in and around Maysville, a town of about 9,000 people on the Ohio River. Few plots were more valuable than those owned by Delcia Bear and her mother, Ida Huddleston. Their 400-acre farm sits right where the company, later revealed to be a subsidiary of a major tech player, though the newsletter doesn't name it, wanted to build a 2.2 gigawatt hyperscale data center. That's massive. For context, 2.2 gigawatts is enough electricity to power roughly 1.5 million homes. The offer, $26.48 million. Life-changing money for a family farm. All they had to do was sign. Then Bear and Huddleston discovered what their farmland would be used for. Not a factory, not a warehouse, a hyperscale data center, the kind that powers the AI technology rewiring geopolitics, the economy, and now hometowns like theirs. They said no. Since refusing the windfall, the pair have become polarizing heroes of the rural campaign against data center expansion. Eric Schwartzel reports that the town is split. Some neighbors see the holdouts as selfish, blocking jobs and tax revenue in a place that badly needs both. Others see them as defenders of a way of life, protecting farmland, water, and quiet from the hum of thousands of servers and the strain on the local grid. The company has since moved on to other parcels, but the fight has crystallized a national tension. The AI boom needs land, power, and water, and rural America is where it's landing. Bear and Huddleston didn't just turn down money. They forced a conversation. From the heartland to the front lines of a very different kind of war. Before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Irina Terek was a 34-year-old millennial furniture designer in Kyiv. Her small business made outdoor furniture and ornaments, benches, flower pots, wash basins. She also worked with urban developers on pedestrian bridges and walkways. Today, she is the CEO and Chief Technical Officer of Firepoint, a defense company with 7,000 employees whose long-range drones and missiles are hitting targets across Russia and helping Ukraine shift the balance of the war. Matthew Luxmore tells this extraordinary story of pivot. Terek didn't have a background in weapons. She had engineering know-how, a maker's mindset, and a country fighting for survival. Firepoint started small, modifying commercial drones, 3D printing parts, iterating fast. Now they produce long-range strike drones and missiles domestically, reducing reliance on Western supplies. Terek's journey from flowerpots to firepower underscores how total war mobilizes entire societies and how Ukraine's tech sector, born from a vibrant pre-war startup scene, has become a strategic asset. It's also a reminder that the face of modern defense isn't always a general or a legacy contractor. Sometimes it's a furniture designer who refused to leave. Now to a crisis that's been building for decades and is finally forcing the federal government's hand. The Colorado River provides water for 40 million people and more than 5 million acres of farmland across 7 U.S. states and Mexico. But drought and overuse have drained its reservoirs, Lake Mead and Lake Powell, to historic lows. After years of impasse between states over how to share the shrinking pie, the federal government has stepped in. The plans include a short-term fix for an ailing reservoir, likely targeted conservation payments and operational adjustments, and longer-term efforts to keep the river flowing. But as Josh Ulick reports, it is unclear how effective these measures will be. The fundamental problem remains: the river was allocated based on unusually wet years a century ago, and climate change is making the basin hotter and drier. Agriculture uses the vast majority of the water. Cities have grown. Tribes hold senior rights not yet fully quantified. The federal intervention is unprecedented, but the math is brutal. This isn't just a Western story, it's a national food, power, and economic security story. And it's playing out in real time. Let's turn to the headlines moving the world right now. The U.S. admiral overseeing the war with Iran visited the USS Abraham Lincoln amid reports of poor living conditions on the aircraft carrier, which has been deployed for 9 months. Extended deployments are grinding down sailors, maintenance backlogs, overcrowding, burnout. The admiral's visit signals leadership attention, but the structural problem remains. The Navy is asked to be everywhere at once with a fleet that's shrinking relative to demands. At a Texas meeting to approve a new 2028 presidential primary calendar, Democratic Party officials sought to move past fights over fundraising and socialism that have fractured recent gatherings. The party is trying to project unity and procedural normalcy ahead of a wide-open primary. But the underlying tensions over donor influence, ideological direction, and the legacy of the Biden era aren't resolved. They're just scheduled. NATO warplane shot down a suspected Russian drone over Romania, the second such incident in Alliance airspace in 3 days. The drone entered Romanian airspace from the Black Sea direction. No casualties, but the pattern is unmistakable. Russian drones, whether stray or deliberate, are testing NATO's air defenses and threshold for response. Romania borders Ukraine. The alliance is on edge. Chinese petrochemical company Hangli has become a major importer of illicit Iranian crude, according to industry analysts, shipping brokers, and the U.S. Treasury. Hangli, a private sector giant, is using a network of shadow tankers and opaque ownership structures to move millions of barrels. The oil feeds Hangli's massive refining complex in Dalian. Sanctions enforcement is a game of whack-a-mole, and China's independent refiners, the teapots, have long been the primary buyers. Hangli's scale makes this a significant escalation in sanctions evasion. U.S. manufacturing is booming thanks to AI data centers, and industrial companies such as Caterpillar, Eaton, and Ford are pivoting their business to seize the moment. The data center build-out requires enormous amounts of steel, concrete, power equipment, cooling systems, and backup generation. Caterpillar is selling more generators and engines. Eaton is supplying electrical infrastructure. Ford is retooling commercial vehicle lines for data center logistics. This is a genuine industrial renaissance driven not by policy alone but by a tech capital expenditure cycle measured in hundreds of billions. And patients with rare diseases often spend 5 years or more searching for a diagnosis. Now AI is helping some get answers faster. Machine learning models trained on genomic data, symptom clusters, and medical literature are flagging rare conditions that individual doctors might see once in a career. It's not a cure, but a diagnosis ends the diagnostic odyssey, opens access to trials, and guides care. Early days, but real hope. Now to the markets, where 2 big picture columns frame the moment. James McIntosh writes that by becoming market makers of last resort, central banks have gotten stuck in a rinse and repeat cycle of crises. Every time liquidity evaporates, March 2020, the gilt crisis, the regional bank wobble, central banks step in, expand balance sheets, suppress volatility. But the intervention creates moral hazard, encourages leverage, and sets up the next liquidity crunch. The Fed's balance sheet is still enormous. The ECB and BOJ are in similar binds. McIntosh argues we've built a financial system that cannot function without constant official support and that the exit ramp keeps moving. Asa Fitch writes that China's cheap and powerful open-weight AI models are scaring investors in the AI boom, but there's less to worry about than meets the eye. Models like DeepSeek and Qwen are matching Western benchmarks at a fraction of the compute cost. That spooked NVIDIA and the Magnificent Seven narrative. But Fitch notes, open-weight doesn't mean open source in the full sense. Deployment still needs infrastructure, talent, and data, and Western labs aren't standing still. The scare is real, but the mode isn't gone, it's just shifting from model weights to systems integration, data flywheels, and application layer dominance. Now, the newsletter also teases 2 other features we should flag: the college dropout entrepreneurs and the collectors of remarkably normal cars. The newsletter says, we asked for successful entrepreneurs who bypassed a degree how they built their businesses. And, a growing crowd of car enthusiasts is collecting vehicles that are remarkably normal, think Ford Tauruses, Honda Civics, and Buick station wagons. Those full stories live in the journal, and they're worth your time. The dropout piece explores credential inflation, alternative signaling, and the grit of building without a diploma. The car piece is a cultural delight, nostalgia, irony, and the hunt for the unhunted. Mundane machinery as treasure. Let's look at the week ahead. Tuesday, primaries in Alaska, Florida, and Wyoming. Down ballot races that will shape legislative majorities and test Trump's endorsement power in deep red states. Wednesday, the Little League World Series begins in Williamsport. Also Wednesday, and this is big, Trump has said this will be the first day of new 50% tariffs imposed on a range of Canadian imports, including goods that would otherwise qualify for an exemption under the U.S. Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement. If implemented, this blows a hole in USMCA and signals a return to aggressive unilateral trade policy. Markets, supply chains, and Ottawa are watching. Thursday, Novak Djokovic, The Wolf in Winter, a documentary about the tennis player, arrives on Prime Video. And the arts and culture calendar has more. Friday, in soccer, the English Premier League kicks off a new season. The world's most watched sports league returns, with new managers, big transfers, and the usual chaos. Now, the number of the week, 27%. That's the share of actively managed U.S. large-cap equity funds that beat their benchmark passive fund alternatives in the 12 months ended June 30, according to Morningstar data that compares returns after fees. Investment pros say AI disruption has created a stock picker's market. Volatility, dispersion, sector rotation should favor active management. But such funds are performing as poorly as ever. The structural headwinds, fees, turnover, benchmark hugging haven't gone away. And the AI boom has been so concentrated in a handful of megacaps that missing them or underweighting them has been fatal to active returns. The stock picker's market remains more marketing than reality. And finally, a palate cleanser, literally. Two guys are eating their way around the world without leaving New York. Dylan Davis and Nichols Neff were fed up with corporate slop, the bull-centric meals that are a staple of sad office lunches. To break out of their rut, they began working their way through the cuisines of every country in the world at local restaurants and documenting their experience on social media. The decision changed their palates and the trajectory of some New York City restaurants. They've hit Afghan, Albanian, Algerian, working alphabetically through the UN member states. Tiny family spots in Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx get lines out the door after they post. Owners cry. Menus expand. The project is called UN Plate, and it's a reminder that New York's greatest asset is its people and the flavors they bring. It's also a masterclass in algorithmic serendipity, 2 roommates, a spreadsheet, and a city that contains the world. Before we go, a quick note from beyond the newsroom. Wall Street Journal by Side has a guide to designer-approved ceiling fans that will keep you cool in summer and warm in winter. Yes, reversible motors matter. Worth a look if you're upgrading. That's your 10-point for Sunday, August 16, 2026. This newsletter was curated and edited by Liz Weber and Christina Roca in collaboration with Editor-in-Chief Emma Tucker. If you're not subscribed, you can sign up at WSJ.com. Thanks for listening. See you tomorrow with the weekday briefing.